Woj is back. All right, Woj. So the very important question I ask is there a deal that could be made that might change a bigger picture here with these teams come playoff time?
Listen, there's not a star out in this marketplace, this trade deadline, but I think there's players who can impact contenders. I think the two teams, Toronto with Kyle Lowry and Orlando. Again, we talked about Aaron Gordon, but I think Toronto really is the team that may dictate this deadline because Kyle Lowry and Norman Powell, are two good players that they have. And certainly I think if Kyle Lowry ends up in a Philly or a Miami, that's certainly, I don't know if all of a sudden Brooklyn thinks, hey, we're still not the best team in the East. But that can be impactful, and it's going to be guys like Lonzo Ball in New Orleans and, Victor Oladipo in Houston. Those are all players available and who all may very well move before Thursday.
What do the Lakers do with AD down and LeBron out, if anything?
Well, they've wanted to get certainly more size. They may not be able to do it in the trade market. The buyout market might be the place where obviously the Lakers could improve without having to give anything up because, they may, if you're going to make a trade, you want to be able to improve, and you can't always do that when you're giving something up. So Andre Drummond in Cleveland, if he ends up getting a buyout, if he's not moved at the trade deadline, which I think it's unlikely because of his contract, and he gets into the buyout market, he's certainly somebody who they are focused on and want to bring in there. He'd become their starting center. And so that's going to be impactful. You're going to see a lot of guys, I think guys who don't get traded in that buyout market. And you saw the Clippers create another spot to be able to add a player in the buyout market. They have 2 roster spots. Brooklyn's going to continue to be active there. And, so I think for the Lakers, though, listen, they just need to get AD and LeBron healthy. And that they're not going to fear in the first round having to go on the road in a series. They know they can beat anybody if they're healthy. And so I think playoff position for them is less important. They just have to get their two best players back healthy. And I mean, just imagine if you're the Jazz or you're the Suns and, you have just this tremendous season, you're a 2 seed or a 3 seed or the 1 seed. And all of a sudden you show up in the playoffs in game 1 and there's a healthy LeBron and AD, dribbling into the building. It's not ideal.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Could this be a good thing for the Lakers from the standpoint of now LeBron is forced to rest, whereas it felt like he was hell-bent on resting because he wanted to show the rest of the league he doesn't do load management and he wants to win another MVP?
Well, the high ankle sprain, listen, that's a tough injury and it can linger. And so I don't know if it's a good thing. I think, though, for the Lakers, their timelines can't change. Their timelines certainly can't change with AD because LeBron's out. They can't, and they won't rush him back. But they can lose a lot of ground in the West, and you don't want to fall. It's going to be a climb in the postseason, however they look at it. I mean, they're going to be a team that's probably going to have to go on the road in the first round, and we'll see how. Listen, in this, there'll be fans in buildings. It may not be what typically it's like to go on the road in the postseason. It may not be buildings that are full, but there'll be some capacity, and I think that softens the blow of having to go on the road in the postseason. But, yeah, I think for LeBron, he's just always shown an incredible capacity to heal, to play through injury, and to just be able to come back quicker than others can. But with this one, this is going to be a few weeks.
Kyrie leaves for 3 games. Do we know what's going on? I know he said it's personal, but is this something that will continue this season?
No, the Nets, this was an absence that they're fully on board with and is just sort of the normal sort of family thing. They said family matters. There's no backstory on this of, hey, we're not. They knew what it was, and it's not an issue.
Can Lamello Ball win the Rookie of the Year if he's done for the rest of the season?
It's a good question. Has he played enough games? I think Anthony Edwards he's been so good in Minnesota, and I don't know how all the things people take into consideration when they vote. I think certainly Lamello improved that team. That team played, they were in the playoff chase largely, or, him and Gordon Hayward were in that top eight Gordon Hayward in that top eight in the East. But Edwards has played so well over the last few weeks. I think that he's, he could finish strong and steal it. But Lamello, I think the kind of rookie year he had and the kind of just revelation he was in the league and for that franchise, I think it'll probably still be close. I don't think it's out of the question he can win it, but I think Edwards has come on strong enough that he's going to probably have a case to be made just because of how much more he'll have played by the time people are voting.
What would you tell anybody who thinks there's a chance or thought there was a chance Brad Stevens would leave the Celtics for the Indiana Hoosiers, John?
Yeah, it's just, you talk to coaches who've coached in both levels, and there's nobody who would rather be in college basketball than the NBA. That even now, listen, there are assistant coaches in the NBA who become college candidates, largely because they're not sure if the NBA head coaching is in their future or they could go back to it. Maybe they've been a head coach and, a couple of the guys interviewing for the University of Utah job are NBA assistants. But anybody who's in the NBA will only go back to college if they're forced to, if they're not welcome in the NBA anymore. And Brad Stevens, no matter how much money Indiana offers him, listen, if Brad Stevens somehow left the Celtics, if someday he gets fired in Boston, and I think he's going to be there a long time. He's not getting fired. He'll be a head coach somewhere else. Billy Donovan left Oklahoma City. It never dawned on Billy Donovan. Like Billy Donovan could have any college job he wanted. Somebody would fire their coach to hire Billy Donovan in college. Never dawned. He's an NBA coach now. He goes to Chicago. He would have had plenty of other offers. Brad Stevens will be an NBA head coach as long as he wants to be. It's just not something anybody would choose to do. And, Brad Stevens at Indiana, I know at Indiana they wanted to believe he'd come back. It's just not an appealing, compared to the NBA, it's just not an appealing lifestyle. It's not an appealing, the recruiting, the portal, all the things that have changed in college basketball, constantly having to retool that roster every year. People would prefer to be in the NBA.
I'm trying to, make out what Steve Kerr is bringing up. He was on a podcast and he talked about, and I'm paraphrasing here, and that's dangerous, but he was talking about, the enjoyment of a team that won 15 games and coaching them as opposed to that last year when Durant was there. Durant then commented saying it's hilarious that he would think that, but like how much acrimony or drama was there that we really didn't know about with the Warriors, that Kerr would say, I get to go back to just coaching college, or, these players in the NBA, even though we're losing.
Yeah, Dan, I didn't go back and listen to that podcast, so I don't know the context of what he was saying. So without knowing exactly the context of, there was a broader point. I saw what Steve said in his news conference last night, that it was taken completely out of context. It was a difficult year. I think it was a difficult year for Kevin Durant, for Steve Kerr. I think there was a lot of tension around that team, and but whether it was more enjoyable to coach a 15-win team, I don't know if that's what Steve said. Again, I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I do think it was pretty well documented that that was not the strongest relationship within the organization. But I mean, that's kind of true of a lot of teams and a lot of players and coaches. And at the end of the day, you're judged on the results. They had incredible results with Durant and Steve Kerr together. And,
but why did it go bad though, Woj? Like you, I don't know. It felt like Draymond Green was onto something early where he knew that Kevin Durant was going to be leaving and wasn't, one of the guys. But I mean, you had something there. I don't know how sustainable it was going to be, but when did it go wrong in Golden State?
Listen, I think that just Kevin went there at a time in his career where the Warriors allowed him to win a championship, to win Finals MVP. He built sort of his off-court business in Northern California, and then he was ready for something else. He wanted to have a team that was his. He wanted to come east, and Brooklyn was attractive to him, and he wanted to play with Kyrie Irving, and he got the chance to do that. I just think it's a different time in the league where all of us would look and say, well, why wouldn't you just want to stay together? Why wouldn't you want to just keep winning with that group? But that's not the league anymore, and you have to maximize these window of times when you have these teams together, because not just in Golden State, but whether it was in Miami or anywhere else, if it's the Brooklyn Nets now, how long does that group want to continue to play together if they win a title or two titles? That's just the reality of the league. I think the Warriors generally maximize that window. They might have won a title in the last year, if not for the injuries, but Toronto beat them. So I just think it's not just a Golden State question. I think it's a large, broader question for the whole league, and it's a league of constant movement, and there's not always great staying power in any situation, and that's the league now.
I know things are going to get busy for you, Woj. We appreciate you joining us as always, and thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN senior NBA insider, host of the Woj podcast. You can catch Woj on ESPN and ABC's NBA Countdown.